So this session is all about data automation driving better customer engagement journeys. And our panelists for this panel are Anthony, the CEO and co-founder of TikTok. We've got Xavier, who is the CEO of Up, and Tim, co-founder and CEO of Own Home. And moderating the panel, we have Rebecca Shotguppy, partner at Firemark Ventures. Welcome.
Thanks, Rachel. So I learned from the best back in the day, Alan Sen, who used to ask each panelist to introduce themselves in 100 words or less. So can I please ask you all to introduce yourself in 100 words or less?
Hello everyone, I'm Anthony Baum. I'm the founder and CEO of TikTok, the original TikTok. We're a financial technology platform, most famous for use cases in the home loan space, but increasingly our platform is used across a number of customer experience journeys in the consumer space. We are a scaled FinTech. About 3% of the Australian home loan market activity touches our platform every month now. We have 17 enterprise customers, and we're really passionate about using data to create better customer experiences, and that is tripartite in its structure. That's end consumers, it's staff that need to interact with the technology, and also the developers. Thanks.
Just 100 words.
I think it was about 95
yeah,
words, was it?
Just.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Xavier at Up. Up's a digital bank. We've been around a couple of years now. We really got our start helping people with their spending and saving, really helping people save their first dollar. We'll go from that point where maybe they were too afraid to look at their bank account to actually, hey, this is kind of fun. I'm feeling in control now. Really grateful that we're sort of at the point now where a lot of those customers have been saving and now maybe at the point where they might be starting to think about buying a home. We've partnered with TikTok to recently release Up Home, which is a pretty unique home loan product that our customers are starting to really get around. So that's me and that's Up.
94 words, so just one. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Harley, CEO and co-founder of Own Home. So our mission is to help aspiring homeowners overcome what is the biggest barrier to home ownership today, and that's the deposit hurdle. So we do that by funding up to the entirety of a customer's 20% deposit, which means that they can fund up to the entirety of their home. And so we started with that thesis, but when we started funding homes for customers, we very quickly saw that the entire home buying journey for first home buyers was actually pretty broken. And there was a real chance for a 10x experience there. So not only do we help you fund the entirety of your home, but actually we manage the entire buying process for you as well.
Thanks, Tim. Now to set the scene, and I'm going to ask you all this question, what have been the challenges you've faced in using data to rethink your customer journeys? Have the challenges been more on the industry side or about the customer appetite or adoption?
I think your turn, Xavier.
I think for me, it's really been internal. I think with the things that we're trying to do, a lot of what we're doing is really aligned to customer outcomes. So we haven't really had a lot of problems with customers or consent or anything like that, because it's pretty clear how we're using the data to help the things that they want to do, and we're very upfront with how we're doing that. So I haven't really had any challenges from that perspective. I think internally, we really built up from the start. We sort of realized that data was going to be so critical to what we were trying to do. I think particularly if you're working, if you're building into legacy systems or integrating with partners, sometimes you can run into a problem where if you don't think it from day one, you get to this point where you've got all these data and all these different systems, and you can't bring them together in efficient ways to help build the things you want to build. So from the very start, we were thinking about, okay, how can we get our data together in the same place so that internally we can use that to quickly build things like our insights system, payday, upcoming, all of these features that are really useful for customers that are very, very data driven, but a lot of other companies really struggle with because they didn't think through their data architecture and how they're either getting data out of systems or out of partners, or how they were going to deal with that. That's probably one of the challenges but opportunities I think for us that we really faced head on.
We might unpack that a little bit more later.
Absolutely.
I'll jump in because I can give some words back. Definitely industry. So there is no doubt that the pace at which the fintech ecosystem can move is seen as a competitive challenge to traditional industry. And so the goal of industry is they're big, they have customers, slow it up.
Tim?
Really agree with those. So maybe I'll touch on like the customer side, which is, going through what a customer goes through with TikTok or with Own Home is, what is a full home loan underwrite. So you learn a lot about your customer. They provide a lot of financial information, a lot of personal information, so you can make, a really good underwriting decision. I think the onus there is you're then in a place where you can really help as long as, they're informed, they understand what the benefit is to them, how they're using it, why you're using it, other parties, to be really helpful, because there's a lot of different partners that touch, in our part of the world, a home financing and a home buying journey. But I would say definitely the onus on, us to make sure the customer's aware what the data is, why we're using it, who we're sharing it with, and getting that up front.
Thank you. Xavier, you just touched on it, that you have a view that data should be democratised company-wide. How have you approached this as a strategy, and how do you protect data of customers if everyone has access to it?
Yeah, great question. So I just talked about getting all the data in the one place and using that to build products, but actually a thing that we try really hard to do is how do we provide access to that data to as many people in the company as possible? And that's not just here's some raw data, but that's how can we help people who may not be as familiar with using data. How can we sort of either do education or provide dashboards or this to help people make better decisions about what they're doing? And so that's been a really strong strategy for us to sort of help the company move fast. One of the risks there is that, how do you protect your customers' data? Because obviously, that can be a big vector for data loss or any of that sort of thing. So we've invested quite a lot into how do we, obviously some people need access to personal information and that sort of stuff. But usually for most sorts of aggregate sort of analysis, you don't. And so how can we provide anonymized data sets to our internal employees in a way that sort of can't really be linked back to customers to help sort of protect that data and lower the risk of if there is any issues there, we're sort of really managing that risk of customer harm that might come out of it. So yeah, that's been a big part of our strategy. And there are some really good open source tools and that you can use to help with this. Although any sort of BI tool can probably do this, but we use Metabase. It's been really effective for us as far as allowing people to create dashboards, allowing people to ask questions of the data. And that, so we've got product features that are directly driven by the data that we have, but then I think everything we do is informed by all that data. And I think that's really, really important.
Thank you, Xavier. Tim, this question kind of flows from that. There's an increasing focus on security and privacy, both from the regulators and customers. How do you find the balance in ensuring automation provides the best customer experience possible, but not at the risk of breaking the trust or privacy of that customer?
Great question. I think one of the operative words is trust, right? So, that is key. And for our customers, that's like one of the biggest decision criteria of do they use Own Home or do they use an alternative is just going to be, trust. Particularly around, with a home. Yes, it's one of the largest financial decisions most people will make in their life, but it's not a Tesla call option. There are like emotions tied to this that go beyond just a like purely financial metric. And so trust to customers is, particularly important in the space that we operate in. We think about it on kind of three pillars. So trust in the company, trust in the product, and trust in the person that they're interacting with. And so maybe just to like bring that to life, I think I mentioned before, we operate in the home funding as well as the home buying journey. And so that is an incredibly, high trust experience for the customer because there's a lot of information that we're at the center of, from all the information that they provide at the start of the application, which is, detailed financials and personal and household information to information with conveyancers and home loan providers and credit bureaus. So I'd say the bar is really high in particular industries and for particular like customer challenges, and we definitely sit at the middle of one that we know we just have to meet a much higher bar because of what we're dealing with, which is how we think about like all the decisions through the journey. Is at this point in the journey, coming back to data automation, at this point in the journey, does the customer want frictionless, seamless, I want to move fast, just get it done, or is it a point where it's, you know, a decision point and they want to be really confident in their decision. So I think you can't really have a blanket rule for both because customers will be wanting different things at different times on that journey.
I'm just going to ask an ad-lib question here. Anthony, how have you found the interrelation with trust and CDR and coming from a TikTok perspective? Because I know you've done some work there.
So we started with a proposition that was purely screen scraping based, or actually upload your statements. So we've from forever have given customers choice as to how they provide their data to fulfil their needs and their assessment processes. We are CDR accredited. We have enterprise customers that are about to use CDR to underwrite home loans. We see that CDR is probably the biggest wasted. We think CDR is the biggest wasted opportunity at this point.
I hope there's no media in the room right now.
Yeah. Because it's wasted because it is so powerful, it is so pro-competition, it's so pro-customer, it's so pro-compliance, but we've just put too many friction points in to get the rapid take-up that would see us move to world leading in that space. I still think we can do it. There is still hope. We're at a point, and we're absolutely committed to being at the forefront of its use.
Thank you. This question's to everyone, but particularly probably Anthony and Xavier, given that you work together. We know businesses can't do everything themselves. How have you partnered with financial services or tech companies to deliver your customer experience?
So we partner with TikTok because we don't know how to do lending automation. That's the blunt part of it. Imelda talked a little bit about this in a previous session, that I think recognizing what your strengths are, and I mean, I make that sound like it obvious, but like that was a tough choice. Like we did have to make some compromises because, you know, we're so used to having such strong control over how it looks and feels, and if you're using somebody else, you're necessarily going to have to make compromises there. But I think recognizing that, you know, if you try and do everything 100% exactly how you want it all the time, you'll still be working on the thing 3 years from now, and customers won't have actually benefited from it.
And we love partnering with ARP because they are way better at UX and CX than we will ever be.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those ones where we can sort of bring what we're both good at, and then, you know, the net result is we have a thing that customers really like, and it's really helpful, and we got it to market probably years quicker than we would have been able to otherwise. So I think really recognizing where there's a skill, or even it doesn't even necessarily have to be a skill gap, but where I also think it like, what is the thing what's UP's competitive advantage? And it's not being really good at lending automation, right? Like overall, we need to keep our costs low and all of that. That's sort of standard. But we're really good at how do we bring this all together? How do we say, because a lot of people, you think about a home loan, particularly in FinTech, everybody talks about that application process, right? Because that's the hard part from a technical perspective, right? You have to like, how do you do all the underwriting and all that sort of stuff? That's really difficult. But if you think about the whole journey of the home buying experience, because people don't want a home loan, right? They want a home. And it starts when you save your first dollar for your deposit. That's going to take years. Then you have, I don't know, a couple of months maybe more looking for a house. You have a couple of days, hopefully less, to actually do the application process. And then you've got 20 years to pay it off. So like the application process is such a minuscule part of that journey. And so what we're looking at is how do we stitch all that together so that it feels cohesive, that it feels nice, that it feels like something that people can trust, because to your point, trust is so important, and people want to use. And then where can we sort of, take the bits of that are not our core competencies, such as that automation piece, and get other people to do it. And so that's sort of how we've approached that, and I think that's going really well for us at the moment.
And there is also another partner on stage. So Tim, you also use Validate, which is one of TikTok's products. Do you want to talk to that?
Indeed, I'm very thankful for the many engineers constantly working on behalf of Own Home's customers that are in the TikTok offices. we have a very similar thesis, which is, where do we need to play and what do we need to be best at? And there are many wheels that you could reinvent going through the home buying journey and taking the customer on that. But why reinvent them when someone else is, when we look at, what do we want from this? We want customers to have quick decisions. We want to be able to do larger volumes with this given team. We want better quality decisions because our data is better. Those are really hard things to do. The 10-minute mortgage has been on the horizon for a decade or so. It is really hard. So partnering with TikTok means that we don't have to devote all our resources to doing something that someone else is frankly just doing much better. And I think we've seen them pulling forward the market on what a really seamless digital experience is like. And Xavier was showing me also again, what it's powering in the app on. It was a really interesting point you made on, the app flow is a part of the home buying journey. An app is great, that's being solved. But what about the journey to the application, which can take years for people to save for that home loan? So I think that's a really thoughtful way to approach it.
Can I say one more bit on that? So I think more generally, when you're looking to who to partner with as well, if there are areas that that are going to change over time that you don't want to have to pay attention to, so the regulatory environment's going to shift, CDR is going to shift, and how that applies. I also see this. I guess it's kind of old topic now, but cloud and using cloud services. A lot of people are still in the fintech, in finance, are still a bit nervous about that. But you're if you have somebody who can do all your patching for you, who can keep up to date, with all the security and vulnerabilities, who can, it's not just we built the thing and now it's there and now it just runs itself. That's not how this stuff works. And it's not even about ongoing improvement, so that's important. But it's more about, oh, hey, one of the state governments changes how they do stamp duty or whatever. I don't care about that. I don't want to have to pay attention to that. I don't want to have to respond to that. Having somebody whose job it is to pay attention to what's changing in the industry is really, really, really important, particularly in fintech, because there's a lot of movement in the industry,
So if you haven't picked up yet, TikTok is not just a technology lender. It is a platform as a service business. I know you like to say that, Anthony. So you are a technology enabler, but you see that there are still impediments to change, particularly for the incumbents. What are they, and what needs to change to drive outcomes for customers?
The biggest impediment is actually that the DNA of the incumbents is they still want to build stuff. Ironically, they're building on anyway. So what that actually means is we're minimising the opportunity for shared infrastructure. And shared infrastructure, to the points that Xavier made and Tim made, where they make sense, are actually in the industry's best interest, because what they'll do is create efficiency and also really, really powerful models, because models drive off data, and the more data you have, the better your models are. So if you think about that in the context of Tim's business, he starts up, they're using iValidate, they're benefiting from 7-year-old models that have had tens of billions of dollars of home loan flows through them, and they can rely on the outputs they're generating from day one. They do not have to start from scratch. The incumbents are reluctant to jump into that, particularly below the big four, jump into that way forward, because they've still got lots of large teams whose job it is to build. And if I'm not building, I'm not there. But for consumers to benefit, society to benefit, for returns on equity to improve in the industry, actually we do need to move forward and move more to shared infrastructure models where it makes sense. And AI should drive that, because that scale is important.
Thank you. My last question's for everyone. How do you measure the success of your data automation initiatives in terms of customer satisfaction and business outcomes?
Yeah, I can give two sort of North Star metrics that we think a lot about, one on the customer side, one on the business side, and kind of operational excellence. So customer side, NPS at the end of the home buying journey, so home settlement. That incorporates, what is typically a pretty terrible journey that people are vocal about how terrible buying a home is. And so we want to make sure that, that entire journey, we're getting feedback from customers, not just at point of application or a single point in that journey. We collect that actually 3 months after they're in the home as well, to scrub out some of the, excitement around getting the keys day one, which is very exciting, and the sold sign. that everyone seems to do. And the second is really kind of application volume, which again, just the volumes for a business at our stage, it would not be possible without someone else having solved some of the really painful large problems that TikTok's solving. And so, today we've had 23,000 applications from covering 40,000 applicants. They're not numbers that someone at our stage of business would be able to process. So those are some of the metrics to think about on customer and then operational excellence.
Yeah, I kind of separate that. For me, there's no real difference between the metrics I'm using for data things versus not, because ultimately the data is in service of the customer outcome we're trying to get. And some problems don't need it, a lot of problems do. And so you really just need to start from what am I trying to do, and just being familiar with how data can help enable that or not. Being very comfortable in learning how to do that, I think, is really, really important. Because ultimately the metrics are the sorts of things Tim just mentioned. For up 80% of our new customers are referred, come by a friend. So that, it's very good for our cost of acquisition.
Including my 72-year-old father.
Including your 72-year-old father.
With the joint account.
He's
yes.
a massive up fan.
I'll take that referral, thank you very much. But that tells me two things. Well, one, from a business perspective, helps keep the cost of acquisition low, which is awesome. But that's almost the best validation we can get as far as, are we doing things that are actually helping people? If they want to tell their friends and get all their friends involved as well. So yeah, we've got all sorts of other metrics, but that's, for me, that's probably the most important one. Is this exciting enough that people want to tell everyone about it?
I'm conscious of time.
No, I've still got 3 minutes. You've got 3 minutes.
Look, I would just make the comment that data is the fuel. It's actually what you do with it that matters. Yeah. And that's the opportunity, and why we shouldn't be afraid of the emerging technologies as long as we govern them appropriately. And actually, the best thing we could do as a country is expedite our embracing of those capabilities, because it'll actually stimulate better customer outcomes. It'll stimulate industry, not just here, but if we actually get it right, create an export industry in our capability to use that data better. And so I just applaud us to do that.
One of my bosses just told me recently that data is like the new gas pipes. So I won't leave with that analogy. I'll end it like I started. So in 50 words or less this time, what does the future look like for traditional financial services processes, and who is best set up to create superior customer experiences?
I feel like I've got a conflict of interest answering that. They're in trouble and I'm coming for them.
Do you want to go on?
I just think what we're going to see is, we've been talking about change and the use of data for a long time. We're going to see more change in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 15. And it feels that this is the moment. And of course, our mission is to be a big player in that ecosystem of providing those tools to the industry.
I think you just got it in again at 49.
I think the kind of typical consumer is much more aware. We've had some pretty public data breaches, which has put it really at the fore of the public psyche. So I think people are looking more for, is this a business that we think is customer centric? How are they using our information? So I do think the customer centricity and that approach that businesses take, consumers are much more discerning about and dealing with them, particularly with financial services, I think.
We do have an audience, and it's not like COVID, so please join me in thanking our wonderful panellists this afternoon.
Thank you, Beck.